So we're talking about tax credits in child custody cases. The default rule is whoever has sole physical custody is entitled to claim the child or children as a dependent in their tax return. But what if you and the other side have 50-50 custody, or you're seeking 50-50 custody? Typically, what we see is a judge is going to allocate sort of an alternating situation where the other side gets to claim the child for 2023 tax year, you're going to get to claim the tax credit or the dependents for the 2024 tax year, and we're going to alternate on from there in a 50-50 physical custody situation. Where you run into problems in that situation is there's almost like a race to the tax prepper, where if you go down to Liberty Tax or something, they're just going to ask you how many kids you have, and that's when they're going to put in the form, and then you're going to be looking at contempt maybe because you've claimed the tax credit in a year when you weren't supposed to. So be clear with whoever is preparing your taxes, or be clear if you're trying to do them yourself with TaxSlayer or some of the other software that's out there and that's available. Call the folks online. They advertise that they've got folks that'll answer your questions if you buy the software. Call them, talk to them. Make sure that you're inputting information the correct way and only claiming the tax credit for the tax year in which you are entitled to do so. You don't want to risk contempt over something as simple as this to avoid. But yeah, in a 50-50 joint physical custody situation, you're going to see alternating years the vast majority of the time, unless one party or the other earns significantly more, or there's some kind of child support deviation to offset that child tax credit. So yeah, it's something that needs to be addressed. It's something that needs to be attended to, but addressing the child tax credit, it is a simple process as long as you're paying attention. And frankly, from what I understand as far as the IRS code and the way that politicians are approaching the tax system right now, that child tax credit could go up in the near future. So certainly through the election season and afterwards into the spring, into tax season, be paying attention to your child tax credit situation and how that comes into play in your child custody case. So you want the other side to pay for your lawyer in a child custody case. I've got some news for you. It's not bad news, it's not good news, it's just news. It's information that you need to be aware of. Yes, in any child custody case in Alabama, the court has the equitable jurisdiction to award one side or the other either all or some of the attorney's fees they have incurred. That does not mean that a lawyer like me is going to come in and take your case for nothing in the hopes that one day you might get a judgment for attorney's fees against the other side. And even if you do, that one day you or our office is actually able to collect on that judgment. So seeking attorney's fees in a child custody case, that's something you can ask for, but typically 99 times out of 100, you're going to need to front the fees and fund your representation, and then keep your fingers crossed that you are awarded attorney's fees if the situation supports that, if the evidence supports that. And then you will be taking on the collection risk of actually executing on that judgment for those fees, whether it's us or anybody else. Don't be out there expecting your lawyer to take the risk on collecting attorney's fees or being awarded attorney's fees, first of all, and then also taking the collection risk. For the vast majority of our clients and the folks out here that do what we do and represent the clients that we represent, we're not going to be able to front our services and keep our fingers crossed that you are awarded a judgment for attorney's fees. So yes, it's always something you can ask for, but think reimbursement, where you're going to fund the representation and then you're hoping that through the process you can ultimately be reimbursed for the attorney's fees you've incurred in your case. Now that's if it's coming from a judge. If you're going through the mediation process, or you are actively negotiating an agreement outside of the mediation process, then you can enter that judgment for attorney's fees if the other side is amenable into that agreement. But if you do so, I would also make sure that there's some sort of timeline that the fees are to be paid by this date or that date or X date or Y date, because it's not just some judgment out there. Again, we want to address not only the judgment itself when it comes to attorney's fees in child custody cases, but we want to address the collection risk and the collection process. In so many of our cases, a third party, whether it's a grandparent, caring relative, maybe a foster parent, aunt, uncle, family friend, a third party has custody of a child. So who pays child support then? Frankly and fundamentally, a child is entitled to financial support from both parents. So each parent, we're going to run the formula that's going to spit out a number, and that's what each parent needs to be paying, their fair share of the child support, what they call a guideline number for that child. So theoretically, a grandparent, a caring relative who has custody of a child is going to be getting two payments, whether that's through the state or through Venmo or however we're doing it. Quite often, frankly, if a third party has custody of a child support's sometimes it's waived, I guess, because we're wanting a parent who might be in a tough situation to get their feet back under them. We're wanting somebody to focus on other things. We're wanting maybe that parent or the grandparent is financially independent, and we're not trying to lean on one of the parents too much. That's not necessarily a great reason to waive child support. I think it's helpful, frankly, for each parent to do their fair share. I think that's empowering for them. But yeah, if you're a third party with custody, you, or more importantly, the child of whom you have custody, is entitled to child support from both parents. So a relatively new development in Alabama law is that even in a situation in which the parents have joint physical custody, whoever earns more is likely to end up paying some amount of child support. We used to get phone calls and we used to deal with situations in which folks thought maybe they could get out of paying any child support if they got 50-50 custody. The first thing I would say to those folks is, man, taking care of your kids is harder than writing a check. I don't care what it's for. The second thing I'd tell them is that now that's not a get out of child support free card anyway. If you earn more than your child's other parent, we're going to run the numbers. We're going to see how the numbers shake out. And if you earn more than the other side, you're probably going to be paying some amount less than if the other side had sole physical custody, but you're going to be paying some amount of child support to sort of even things out for the child so they're not living the high life at one household and eating government cheese at the other household. We want the child to have a consistent, stable experience that frankly, that's good for both parents, and that's really, really good for that child. So everybody's going to do their fair share, even if that means paying some child support in a joint physical 50-50 custody situation. So in your child custody case, there are going to be financial implications, no matter how custody shakes out. Sole physical, subject to visitation, joint physical, third party has custody. No matter how it turns out, there are going to be financial issues regarding child support in your case. There are going to be questions that you have that you just don't know to ask. So work with our team at Foxtrot Family Law. We've got offices all across North Alabama. We're here to help. We're here to help identify any issues that we need to be addressing, answer any questions that you may have, point you in the right direction, and advise and advocate for you and your family each step of the way.